Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's well. Welcome to this meeting of the Policy Committee, held in person as is required, but with some officers attending via the magic of Microsoft Teams. A packed public gallery tonight, which is always an exciting thing to see. So without further ado, we will crack on with the agenda. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Ennis.
Yeah, Leader, I am the chair of YOS, so I want to declare an interest for the item 6. Okay, just want to let you know, chair of YOS board.
And it's a non-pecuniary interest.
It's non-pecuniary,
Thank
yeah,
you
non-pecuniary.
very much, Councillor Ennis. Any other declarations? No, wonderful. Okay, we move on to the minutes of previous meetings, actually 2 sets tonight. We've got the minutes from the 4th of April and from the 25th of May, which was a blink and you'll miss it meeting that followed the AGM. Any comments on either? No, am I okay to sign those both as a correct record then? Wonderful, thank you very much. Moves us to petitions and questions. No petitions, no public questions, but 2 councillor questions tonight. The first is Councillor McElroy to the lead councillor for Corporate Services and Resources. Councillor McElroy.
Thank you, Chair, and wonderful to see you all back here. So I have a question on the use of bailiffs. I have received the following from a constituent. Open quote, I want to raise with you the issue of council bailiff use. According to government figures across the country, £4.4 billion is now owed in council tax arrears. Hundreds of our friends and neighbours are facing a debt crisis as the impact of the cost of living increases and the pandemic continues. I want you to do more to support people in debt, and that includes ending bailiff use. This is one of the most stressful things that people struggling with debt can experience, and there is no evidence that it means more council tax arrears are collected. I'm calling on you to end bailiff use in Redlands and support residents to get out of debt and write off debts where they can't be paid. Personally, I'm opposed to anything that criminalises debt or treats debtors like criminals. I understand bailiff use was suspended at one point, but then restarted again. Could the lead councillor please update us on current policy related to this issue of bailiff use and supporting residents to get out of debt? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McElroy. As Councillor Terry isn't here tonight, I shall read the answer on her behalf. You'll just have to imagine that I'm doing it in her voice. The key is to help people to avoid moving into debt in the first place. That's why we amended our local council tax support scheme this year, so that we deliver more support to the people most in need. It's also why we make sure that frontline staff have the right knowledge and information to give accurate advice to those council taxpayers who may have limited understanding about the support that is available. This helps to ensure that everyone pays the right level of council tax, which can be crucial in supporting those who are potentially financially vulnerable. A resident's bill can be reduced by a wide range of discounts and exemptions that reflect individual circumstances. These are actively promoted on each council tax bill. We've also adopted the Citizens Advice Council Tax Protocol, and our council tax collection processes all operate in accordance with that protocol. Happy to arrange a full briefing on that, Councillor McElroy. I'm aware that we passed it before your first election. The Revenues and Benefits team regularly review their signposting and referrals processes to maximise the opportunities to guide people towards free debt advice where appropriate. This information is contained within all council tax bills. The team have also developed localised reminders that are delivered through multiple platforms, including text messaging, and we're looking to extend this further using informal email reminders. Where residents fail to respond to a bill or miss an instalment, the team will carefully consider the options available to them in their attempts to engage with the individual. Soft text reminders issued prior to any statutory reminder process. It is only where attempts to engage bill payers have not succeeded following the statutory reminder process that the team consider the option of applying for a liability order. And the team have a range of options open to them following a missed instalment, and they always seek to use those options before referring a case to enforcement agents. The team would always look to agree an affordable repayment plan. Failing that, an attachment to benefit or earning would be preferable, with enforcement agents as a last resort. Council staff work with both internal and external debt advisors at any point in the collection process, and they make continued efforts to engage and support our residents alongside any application for a liability order. For example, after a court summons is issued, the team offer an automatically generated repayment plan in order to try to avoid further enforcement action. The team will always consider an individual's circumstances when taking any form of enforcement action and seek to work with the individual for the best possible outcome. Did you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. I don't expect you to have this on hand, so I may follow up afterwards, but I guess my question was about how often enforcement agents are used as a last resort. Are we talking, very rare, or is this a relatively common last resort?
You're right that I don't have the stats to hand. I mean, relatively speaking, it is rare relative to the amount of soft reminders and engagement, but it does happen. I'm sure we can go away. We can arrange for the Revenues and Benefits team to get that detail to you. Thank you, Councillor McElroy.
Thank you.
Where are we at? Question 2, Councillor White, also to the lead councillor for Corporate Services and Resources.
Thank you, Chair. This question is on tackling the cost of living crisis. With everything getting more expensive and gas and electricity bills going through the uninsulated roof, the £150 council tax energy rebate is a drop in the ocean, but better than nothing. How many Reading households not on a direct debit does the council estimate to be eligible for this money? And how many of our residents not on a direct debit have applied so far? How is the council making people aware of how to apply?
Thank you, Councillor White. Again, I'll read the answer on Councillor Terry's behalf. The Revenues and Benefits Service have estimated that just under 60,000 households are eligible for the Council Tax Energy Rebate Scheme, and this represents 80% of all Reading households. Of the 60,000 eligible households, 67% pay by direct debit. 39,636 residents have received their payment as a result of the council holding their direct debit details, with funding of 5.945 million being distributed. It is estimated that applications will be required from just under 20,000 households. The non-direct debit application process opened on the 23rd of May. And to date, just over 3,300 applications have been received through the online portal, which is around 16% of the applications required. 90% of those applications have been submitted by residents directly through the portal, with others being made over the phone with our customer contact centre. A leaflet advising residents of the scheme was included in the relevant council tax bills issued in March. At that time, full details of how the scheme would be administered were not yet known. In fact, the government hadn't announced its own guidance around it, but it does go some way to ensuring broad awareness. There is a dedicated web page with the scheme details, which can be found at the address listed. Full details of the scheme and the application process for those eligible residents not on direct debit were also included in the Residents e-newsletter of the 1st of June, which has a distribution list of around 100,000 addresses. Posters are being put up in libraries across the borough, and coverage has been considerable in local print and broadcast media. The Revenues and Benefits Service will be commencing targeted communications as they see the number of applications decline. Where an email address is held for a potential applicant, details will be issued electronically. Where no form of electronic communication is held, a letter will be issued. Before the scheme ends later in the year, further targeted communication attempts will be made. And should these prove unsuccessful in prompting an application, the £150 payment will be credited to their council tax account, ensuring universal coverage for those eligible. Did you have a supplementary question, Councillor White?
Yes, please, Chair. Pretty much every week I'm speaking to someone in dire financial need. If we're going to be making the payment towards the end of the process anyway to ensure universal coverage, is there anything the council can do to bring that forward? For example, why aren't we just paying everyone now?
That would be the simple answer, wouldn't it? But unfortunately, the government's guidance around it is against that assumption. So it would have been the ideal thing, I think, to have applied it as a credit to all bills in any case, thus spreading that effect over the entire year. The government evidently have taken a decision that it was better for people to have cash in hand, so to speak. And so that's why we are where we are. We have to exhaust the other processes before it can be applied as a credit in that way, which is a bit frustrating. And I think this process could have been rather more straightforward and easier. I think actually the entire scheme is not a particularly well devised one. It is not sufficiently targeted towards those people who are in need. And it ignores the fact that one could be on very low income but living in a Band E house, for example. That is less of an issue in Reading because the vast majority of our properties are below Band D, but it is of course an issue in other parts of the country. It's not a well-designed scheme. It was obviously put together in a rush and the guidance is not good. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you, Councillor White. Right, that takes us to the end of councillor questions for the evening. Moves us on to item 5, decision books, no call-ins received. So we move to item 6, the approval to enter into Brighter Futures for Children leases. And we have Assistant Director Sharon Dillon to introduce over on the magic box. There we go. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Chair. So this report, it provides a background and an update on the Brighter Futures for Children's company property portfolio, and we are seeking authority to enter into the appropriate agreements as outlined in section 4 of the paper. So the Executive Director for Economic Growth and Neighbourhood Services does have delegated authority in consultation with the leader of the council and the lead councillor responsible for the property in question, along with the head of financial services, to approve the Brighter Futures property non-education lease changes and any new leases. However, all property that is disposed of below market value does need to be reported through the decision book or policy committee as per the partnership agreement. And as the agreement with Brighter Futures does entail a 30% discount on the market rent, or sometimes in some circumstances peppercorn rent is applied, we do require policy approval. So despite the delegation, all our agreements do need to come to policy. So therefore we're asking committee to agree the future portfolio as per highlighted throughout section 4 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Assistant Director. And I have Councillor Leng.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sharon, for your report. This is my first policy committee this evening, and first as lead. I support and recommend the action 2.1. I'm talking to you this evening, my colleagues, but I'm also conscious I'm talking to the public as well in this part. I don't know how many viewers we got watching at the moment. Probably not that many. They'll probably catch up on playback or something, won't they? So I would like to reference the article in last week's Chronicle, written by his good self. Reading Council's Children's Services Company could see a spend reduction of £500,000. That's the grab. That's the one that pulls in the readers. But it then goes on to provide details and reasoning behind the proposal. It references Brighter Futures operating relationship with the council, relocation of staff to enable an increase in SEND provision, Brighter Futures needing less office space as they adopt a more flexible way of working in a post-COVID world. And not forgetting our youth offending services relocating to the Capes Grove Community Centre, providing the stability of tenure they so badly need. As councillors, from in front of us and behind us, we try to be fair when we scrutinise policies, but we all view life through our own prism. I try not to allow the view from my prism to become my prison. So, Mr. and Mrs. Public, or Ms. Public, whoever you are tonight, take a read of the article. It sums up the proposal in detail and probably far better than I can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Leng. Is there anything else from? No, nothing from colleagues. Okay, great. Councillor Thompson, welcome to the committee, by the way. probably said that at the
Thank
start,
you.
but it's
Thank you.
fine now.
Yeah, just a question which might be slightly irrelevant, but I just noticed in all the figures that were given that there are quite a few differences in the FM charge, that some have increased, some have stayed the same when the amount of property being rented hasn't changed. And I just wondered what the reason is for it.
A nice question of detail. I mean, in some cases, the property has changed. I think it's worth saying. In other cases, of course, the FM arrangements. Councillor Lang, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, that's quite a good spot. I spotted one the other week actually in the South Reading, Northumberland Avenue. I think their rent had dropped, and I think their facilities management charge had dropped. And I was told it was basically because children's services had moved to a different place, therefore there was less management, and so the charge had dropped. But I can get you a more detailed response from officers if needed.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Thank you.
We can go back and ask, of course, the Assistant Director before we vote as well. Councillor Hoskin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Very briefly, just to say, I mean, actually, this is your first report linked to a public committee. It's an excellent one because it's about obviously delivering services to children across the town. The bit I'd just like to welcome is, this is a combination of Better Futures working more effectively in terms of their space, which is shone through in terms of what's required, but also, I mean, it's just a really good reminder, I think, to us as councillors, the range of services that are embedded in communities across the town. And I think that's something that's always worth remembering. We've hit huge cuts to council funds, not just in Reading, across the whole country, which has reduced some of the, the work that we'd like to do, I think, as councils. But we've still got these facilities and this work moving out through communities, which is really important, and hopefully in better times when councils are better funded, we'll be able to then expand out some of that provision. I think we might need to change government to enable that, but we've got to look to the future. So yeah, I welcome the report. It's really important. It's a bit of an administrative thing, but it shows it's really important we get this right and we get the space right for both the Better Futures administration and the really important services that run out of communities across the town.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. It is a good thing to see the services delivered across the town as a whole. If I go back to the Assistant Director, and particularly if you wanted to come back on the point about the FM charges.
Yeah, I think it is basically, as Councillor Leng has sort of highlighted, it's where there's probably been efficiencies created as a result of, services moving into other buildings or downsizing the space that they actually require. But if you could send me the specifics in terms of which specific assets you're referring to, I can give you a more confirmed, detailed answer.
I'm sure Councillor Thompson can arrange that in due course, but not detecting any dissent. And thank you, Assistant Director. Can I assume that we all agree to pass this unanimously then? Wonderful, brilliant, fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Assistant Director. And that moves us on to item 7, appointments to outside bodies. I assume we don't really need an introduction on this in particular. It's pretty straightforward, and Mr. Hill distributed the full list earlier today. Thank you to the Conservative group in particular for filling some of the vacancies and ensuring a degree of sort of political representation across party lines on some of these bodies as well. Now, I know Councillor Page, you wanted to move something that had been missed off.
Just a last minute change, Chair. On the top of the second page, third item down, you'll see reference to the Carnarvon Drive Management Company, on which I'm currently the representative. I would like to propose that I no longer continue and that Councillor Richard Davis replaces me, please. I would so move.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Happy to second that, and I doubt there's going to be any dissent around it. So I'm going to propose that we take the recommended action with that amendment. Everybody okay with that? Wonderful. Also unanimous. What more can one ask for when it comes to appointing to outside bodies? That moves us to the end of the open session. And I have to move under item 8, the customary motion pursuant to section 100A and so on and so forth. Can we all agree to that, please? Agreed. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So I'll have to say good night to everybody watching online or catching up online, and good night to James in the public gallery. Have a lovely evening.